Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. Before we bring on my next guest, if you were not aware, and sincere apologies, but our 2025 season of Play Noir has to be postponed until the spring of hopefully 2026. The venue that we had intended to use is still under renovation, will not be up and running by our November intended run. So we're shooting for April. So this will give us another opportunity to hopefully go through all over 160 plays, really give them a thorough reading and determine what's going to make a great evening of noir one act. So we'll keep you posted. Be sure to check out the website, www.punkmonkeyproductions.com, for any updates. On that note, my guest today is an internationally award-winning and 4-time New York Times critic pick playwright for her plays Cut, Geek, King Kirby, and Open. Other works include Mary and Max the Musical and Rain and Zoe Save the World. Her play The Rocket Men received a National New Play Network world premiere with Phoenix Theater Cultural Center in Indianapolis, Indiana, and opened October 29th and runs through November 2nd at Synchronicity Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and will have a run at Angels Theater Company in Lincoln, Nebraska as part of their 2025-2026 season. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Crystal Skillman. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. So happy to be here.
So what's the secret to being a 4-time New York Times critic playwright?
Well, that's always left up to the theater gods a little bit. But I think always honing your craft and making sure that you feel as good as possible before the critics come, you will always win.
Okay. And how does one hone, when you say hone their craft, which of course I'm not sure everybody would, but how do you approach that honing?
I do a lot of I try not to just work on the page. So I do drafts, but I do a lot of internal workshops, a lot of internal labs. I might even look at some design elements with different folks before I even share a draft with the theater. So I'm always thinking about writing a draft for once there's enough of it and I feel like, oh, this is I have it now, so to speak. I usually take even like up to a couple of years. Sometimes that's supported by other people. Sometimes it's me asking for a little help. Sometimes that's me going to an organization that supports me and getting a room and having some actors read. So when I was a younger playwright, before I started being noticed by the Times, I would say that I didn't do that as much. And I was a little bit more like excited about the draft and I would send it to a theater right away. And it would be a cool conversation, but it really wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. So I have a couple of people that are my best friends that are theater professionals I work with that I trust. And they're the kinds of people that I might say, even before that, just, hey, could you take a look at this draft? I have a couple of questions about it. And I think I'm missing something here. Megan Hill, who starred in Open Off-Broadway at WP Theater recently, is a very close friend. And I remember sending her Rain and Zoe Save the World. I think it was a cast of about 7. And I said, there's something wrong here. This is such a powerful story about these teenagers going cross country to shut down a pipeline and fight climate change. And it's so inventive, but what's happening? What's wrong? And there's something missing. And she goes, you've lost Rain and Zoe. And we started to kind of just brainstorm like, well, rather than there being 7 ensemble, what if it was 4? And what if 2 are Rain and Zoe and 2 play everything else? And then just that spitball just really baited the draft that I've been working on that hopefully we'll see in the next couple of years. It's had a production in London and some workshops here in the States. Okay.
So when correct me if I misheard, but so you go through and do a design approach to it as well?
Yes, I am a visual writer. I'm a theatrical writer. So, and my basic advice is if you're writing a play between 2, I teach as well. I teach playwriting at the New School, and also I've been a guest at Carnegie Mellon and things like that. I'm teaching. My basic advice is if you're writing 2 people having a conversation in a bar, or you have a family in a living room, you probably don't need to do that. But my works are all theatrical and they're not naturalistic, but they use naturalism. So it may be cast of 4 come together to tell the story. There's a little music underneath, and then they step into the roles, which is like Rain and Zoe, or the roles of Rocket Men. 6 women mysteriously appear and suddenly start dressing like men and telling us they're going to tell the story. Why, So, so it's something that not every playwright does, and it's actually something I stole more from musical theater development because my work was so inventive and different. I would say that for straight play, such a word, but the straight play folks, or the without music folks, really were intrigued by my work, but kind of I wasn't able to direct them enough in my conversation of what I was trying to go for, what I was trying to get. And I think I was sharing the drafts too early. So I realized in musical theater, we never share the draft that early. We're always working through how the song works on the page, and we have demos, and we're working through all that stuff. And I just thought, well, that works. And that's a way of getting people interested in it, even if they are like, oh, this scene needs a little work, but I love that song. Or, I don't know if the song belongs here, but I love the scene, or I love you guys as a team, and relationships are formed out of that. So I think both my writing life and the stories I choose to tell that I think are important to today, and hopefully a bit timeless, sometimes not for the best of reasons because they're political, but I try to also form relationships as I go. In fact, I'm testing people when I share a draft as much as they're testing me, because I'm asking myself, are you the right person to produce this? Are you the right theater? Because what's the point if it's not the right match for both of us? It just doesn't work. And you won't get the New York Times rave, most likely.
So what does that design aspect look on the page? Are you taking I'm assuming you're taking it from all different directions, whether that's set design, whether that's sound design, music, etc. Or
I like to quote my friend. I think a few designer directors or designer creators think this way. But Jared Mazzacci, who's really cool, who did the projections for Viet Gone, and he's got a show he's directing at Playwrights Horizons this fall. We've worked together on Rain and Zoe. And he likes to say, and I think it's so right, that, the playwright is the why, and the designers are the how. But you'll notice in drafts that are theatrical, it takes time to understand for the reader or the producer that you think, or the theater that might get excited by you. How does that stage direction look on the page, right? Like, right. Are you super confident? Are you like Sarah Kane, like a sunflower grows out of the ground, an angel crashes through the ceiling, but it's not an angel crashes through the ceiling. An angel crashes through the ceiling, but he says we can see the wires. The reason why Tony's able to write that is because he went through workshops, and he went through moments where he just would write the angel goes through the ceiling. But to read that forward and understand, he wants to see the theatricality of it. We're not trying to hide something. It's not like it's not projection. It's not things coming at you. It's using the live experience. Well, that's going to change your conversation with the kinds of people that might produce it. So I'm sometimes looking at, like, a lot of my plays are like kind of impossible when I start to talk about them. And so I'm looking in the room in these labs to, how does it work? So open is a magic show without magic. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean to see no magic, but it is magic? Like, what does that mean? Like, so a lot of them are using theater as metaphor and symbolic, because I think that's what theater does so well. I also write for TV and comics, but what you write, they draw, and what you write in a film, they shoot. But the best thing about theater is that, I could, I always tell some of my students, I say it may not be the best play, but I could hold a banana to my ear and I could talk into it, and you'll know it's a phone. And that's interesting. Like, but all that stuff takes time to understand the right language. So I don't tell them how to do things, but I'll indicate, like Rain and Zoe, there's a motorcycle. I'm very clear the motorcycle is not naturalistic, and I offer a couple of solutions, but I'm not saying do it this way or that way. Sometimes if you are studying with, it's kind of gone now because there are so many more modern playwrights teaching playwriting, like Annie Baker, who came from Paula Vogel, and my best friend was John Beluso, who's an amazing disabled playwright, always with us, and I came up in Youngblood, so that means I was in there with Amy Fox and Lucy Thurber and a lot of amazing Francine Volpe, a really great playwright. So I was in the room with people kind of discussing similar things, and we were working them out. But in the old days, I don't think we talked as much about it because American theater tended to be heavily naturalism. And I think just I'm part of a batch of playwrights that just haven't been as interested in that. And then I think, but it takes a little bit more conversation because it takes a level of interpretation. And I guess that's ultimately what I'm looking for from my fellow theater collaborators. Are even the most brilliant ones, are you the right person to interpret it?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I really want to delve into this writing theatrically, and what exactly, just for, well, yeah, especially for me as well. I mean, this is an approach to playwriting, as happens every episode. There's always something new that's introduced that we haven't covered. So writing theatrically is not something we've really approached. And for playwrights who might like to delve into that and give that a shot or a try, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I mean, again, if you are writing scenes that are, hey, you're my mom and I'm your daughter and we have problems, you're not going to need these. The stage direction is beat. It's tense. I get it. She gets a beer from the fridge, right? Like, so you don't need that level. And then some playwrights, if they're starting out, if they haven't taken enough courses or talked to working playwrights, they may not understand what we kind of know when we teach the history of playwriting, which is that in some cases, like Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, for instance, and other of his plays, that's the stage manager's notebook. So the stage manager's notebook is not the author's voice. So there's a difference. So when you're reading something that's like stage less down here, that's really just saying, hey man, here's how to stage it. And that's really just saying, hey, there was already the premiere. So if you in Iowa want to do this play, this is how we did it. Right. But no one's going to show up on like the, I always call it the art police. The art police isn't going to show up and say, oh my gosh, they didn't move stage left. Right. Like, so, and as we know, many great directors actually, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of this, but I know what happens. They cross out the stage directions, right? Because they want to really look at the dialogue. So the truth is it has to go together. It has to be both in the dialogue, but also you have to be clear to indicate kind of what's going on stage in a theatrical work, in the essence of it. Like, and I think particularly with the stuff I'm honing, Open and Rocketman are kind of really good examples. I'm trusting the audience, and I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not saying that's easy because it's really, really hard. It's really hard. But I learned this when Open was first staged in 2019, and then it was lifted up. It got this beautiful rave, and then it moved to off-Broadway, and I saw it again work. And I came up with this concept of magic but no magic. It's being suggested. We're having feelings. We're teaching them how to imagine, just like this woman is saying, you shouldn't imagine, as she's talking about her lover, Jenny. And then we're starting to realize their relationship, and she's a writer. And what does this mean? So, I think there were many times I panicked, even after we did our labs, and I saw, oh, she pantomimes it and there's no sound. But then the second time she does it, there is a sound. Okay. But we're still not showing them. We're trusting the audience. And so she's pantomiming cards. We're hearing the cards, but we don't have actual cards. When I was first creating that work in 2019, I remember, turning to Jessie D. Hill, who's a great director. She's directing Small right now at the Old Globe. And I was like, hey man, maybe we should see the magic. Like I'm kind of freaking out. Like I'm freaking out. Like I'm worried. And she's like, but Crystal, if you give them this, then what's the meaning of the play? You've wrapped so much meaning into this. And I was like, yeah, I guess this is the way it's baked, right? This is what I have to do. And I realized how rewarding it was, because my audience, Mac Wellman, one of my favorite playwrights, always had said that there are two kinds of theater goers there. And it really is true, actually. It's not really political, although, that you could kind of look into that at another level. But it's really those that want the theater of the known and the theater of the unknown. And what that means is an audience member that is interested in leaning in to imagine and figure out what's happening, and someone who just wants it handed to them. And because my writing, I just realized, well, I'm never going to be the writer that's just handing it to them. That's the whole point of the thing. Like, it's so much hard work. Why would I want to write something didactic or something basic in my mind? So I was like, well, if I'm doing that anyway, then I might as well, go all the way, so to speak. I think you can also write a play that the language is so evocative and so clear, and you have no stage directions at all, and you will be able to point them in the right direction. So it could be done through language. It doesn't all have to be stage direction, but I think you will know in writing it better if you can see it. And I guess the other thing I stole from musicals that we don't really talk about with plays, but the Rolling World premiere provides you, because you have it takes time to get those 3 theaters, a lot of conversation, took about 2 years, but to find the correct partners. But I think you get to see the play over and over again. And that's the point of it. And I like it that this program understands you don't know the play until you have a production. A playwright actually doesn't get better. When I say hone my craft, I really can't unless I see it produced. So in a way, these labs and these design things and extra things they're doing are simply me understanding as a working artist that it's impossible for me to make the play perfect on the page, or even just sitting around just hearing actors read it, most likely, without some kind of self-produced element or some kind of private lab. If it's like, I don't want the premiere to be self-produced, or, like you really you learn from seeing it. And the truth is, you should probably see the play 3 times before you really lock down what it is. And I don't know how you could do an important work without that. And musicals would never ask you, like, that's why we have out-of-town tryouts, right? That's why you stay away from New York, because you're constantly looking and trying to understand what it is, and you're constantly doing changes. And also, I love to rewrite. I feel like writing, especially in the theater, is rewriting, because you're trying to capture the present moment so well. So that's part of the fun, I think. So I enjoy that part of it.
Sure. Well, I want to go back to the audience aspect. I mean, but don't you think the audience has a job to suspend disbelief, and that there really shouldn't be anything handed to them, and that whatever you present is going to be, they have to buy, because that's whether it's naturalism or not, there's still a theatricality and a reason that you're going. So that, I don't know. I
guess I would say that some naturalistic work I found to be a little on the nose dialogue, and that feels a little obvious to me. Not all, but even some of our greatest American playwrights, I think,
when you say that, are you saying that that it's not nuanced or layered? It's just like kind of like,
it's just pretty obvious. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I would just say I like proof in Copenhagen. I'm always going to pick Copenhagen.
Right. Okay. And then going back, because we touched on stage direction and stuff like this. So are you kind of giving a blueprint in that regard, or like you really spelling it out, like this is what I expect, and is that, and if that's the case, are you kind of, and this isn't an accusation, it's just a straight up question, are you taking away the job of the designer to interpret how they see your work?
The work is not abstract, it's really specific.
Okay.
And so it's not, I love moment chance, but it's not moment chance, right? So it's, I found nothing but joy in a director and stage directions having a little clarity as to the why and the tone and what's important about it. Like, there's a moment in Rocket Men where they're having these German scientists that sent us to the moon, who many of them are former Nazis. That's the point of the play, and what it's and there's a reveal in that. But I think with the women playing the men, but in a scene where they're this younger German scientist who didn't come from Operation Paperclip has come over and is seeing things in a different way with them. In the middle of an office meeting, he starts talking about Mars, and he's like, "This is what's going to get us there," which is what they actually were passionate about. And so all of a sudden, I just say they look out, they see Mars, they see the dream, right?
Right.
And that the designers do what they do, Okay. So I'm not saying exactly what to do, but I'm giving them the why of where it's coming from. So I would say that I also make sure that any visuals come from the scene, just like a song and a musical comes from the scene, and it comes from the actor. It comes from the desire of the actor. So I guess what I'm saying that's more important for a player is not to say, of course, do it this way, do it that way. It's red, it's white, it's blue, it's on wheels, it's not on wheels, the stage, like none of that really matters. What really matters is why the characters care or where it's coming from or what's at stake for them or what the beat is. Some people don't write that out. Like Pinter would just write beat, you know, and that's totally valid too. And like, it's great. But even our masters, you know, some people think Beckett is, you know, some people think he's more abstract than others. I think he's quite human. And I think that Waiting for Godot has amazing stage directions. Like they're highly specific, they're highly open, but I mean, Endgame has like that opens with one of my favorite visuals is Clove going up this little ladder and just like, what's outside, you know, like, but you need that kind of clarity, not so much to know where Clove is going or that Clove is moving or that Clove is on stage doing things, but more they are alone and isolated and the outside world is a barren wasteland. And that's how we know.
Interesting. When I want to go to open because there was something you said when you were talking about like you started to doubt whether or not to show the magic. What happens if it's produced somewhere else and the director decides that they want to? Would that change the play?
Oh, they couldn't because that's not what the play is. So I own the play and I own the IP and it's published and like, so yeah. And it's had many productions regionally. It's with Broadway Licensing, which became Concord. So it's had at least 20 other productions. No one's ever asked me that. They have asked me, one theater did ask me, because in most cases that wouldn't be, then they just wouldn't want to do that play.
Okay.
They would pick.
So it's pretty apparent that this is a play that is about magic, but really we don't show it. It's gonna,
and it does grow. There's payoffs to this, and so it's integral to the story. So you can't really do that, but you know, then they would do another play. You know, because it's only a one-person play because it needs to be, and most of those one-person plays are pretty suggestive and evocative as well. So if they were looking to do a one-person play, like I don't think that there's. Maybe something like buyer and seller or something, you know what I mean? But like, again, these are apples and oranges. So, but most likely you were drawn to the themes and you were drawn to how it works. And you probably cried at the end of it because of that. You can't see the magic, but also I weave that into the script. I didn't know how to describe that when we were first working. I think it was just dialogue. And then I think when I finally showed them that the sounds will be the reward in the very beginning, I said, this is how magic works in our show. I do have a little forward. I say trust the audience, and that's great. But again, like it's kind of what Mac Wellman said. Like the theaters that are producing plays that are for people that are curious and interested in the theater of the unknown aren't going to program open. They're going to program something that might be a little bit more rooted in the real world. Probably.
Why do you think that?
I think in particular, I've had a lot of plays now done in Europe as well. And I think that it's part of, I mean, talking about America and being American is certainly an interesting thing right now, right? It's like a very scary and interesting time. And as we slide into a very dark time, and a lot of the Rocketman is a lot about that. But we're very steeped in naturalism. It's just something that we're just very steeped in it. And maybe that's why I found the trick in becoming a better playwright and the playwright I want to be through my joy of and honing my craft to musicals and then just reversing it with plays. So I think because the American musical can't be naturalistic. They sing. Like, okay, like, you know what I mean? You know, so like, because it's already breaking the form and because we love it and because it's become so, but I would say that I feel post 80s, like maybe, I don't know, like the 80s and the aughts still get a little weird, but I would say in the past 20 years, plays like in, you know, obviously Angels in America, Inheritance, Indecent, Fairview, and then when they are naturalism, I feel like Mary Jane with Amy Herzog, there's a gloriousness to it that's different, you know. So there's a new modern vibe and sensibility that I think is really exciting. But I would just say in general, from the work I've seen in Italy and London, there's a lot more accepted symbolic, heavy kind of imagery kind of thing with theater. And it's not really questioned. It's just, that's the way the play is. Like, no, I don't like they might be like, it's a little odd. Like one play actually that was quite straightforward at the Royal Court. In between, there were like all these dances, and I was like, why are there dances? Like, I don't know if it feels, this is a political play. I'm not sure I'm feeling. I love that, but I'm not sure I feel it. And my friend was like, oh, they do this all the time, and I was like, okay, like, but there's a level of experimentation. I mean, and also, James, I would say that's just the producer cap on. I'm not a producer, but I'm friends with a lot of producers, and I think knowing budgets and how they work will definitely make you a smarter playwright. Everyone has money troubles, especially now, especially with where we're going, what's happening. However, it's American theater seems to be the most expensive to produce at this point in time. And that's why during the pandemic, a lot of producers, and that's still maintaining, are producing more in London at first, before they bring it here.
Well, London's a pretty pricey place as well.
It's still cheaper than here.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that
still
just
cheaper than New York? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge fan of minimalism as it is, and that's why me too, that's why I did noir.
Yeah, I love that you have the noir thing. Yeah, I write comics as well, so that's like it's my comic brain kind of.
Sure, yeah. So we did 7 seasons of play noir because it doesn't take a lot to establish a private detective's desk. It doesn't take much to establish a bar.
Yep.
Or a street
I love genre
corner
on stage as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm right there with you in that regard. I want to talk about this. I'm curious about the approach, the process and this decision to go the route you did with kind of taking a musical approach without being a musical, but using the elements of a musical and then inserting it into a play. That's not exactly what you said. Now, hopefully I'm articulating exactly what I'm asking.
Well,
you said you're taking these elements of musical theater.
Just to clarify, I'm not taking the playwriting elements. I'm not taking the book writing elements. I'm saying that because American theater is programming, there's a scarcity. There is not scarcity, and we should not operate from a place of scarcity. But logistically, theaters can only have a certain amount of space and time, and a season, and that has become even more challenging with the economic demands. So 6 slots may have gone down to 3. It's something that we're all experiencing and understand. So I think so. What I'm saying is, many playwrights that I talk to do a lot of contests and do a lot of trying to win and be chosen and be picked. I would say it's sure as heck doesn't have to be my process, but I think not. In addition to honing your craft as a writer, you also, if you want to stay in this, I think, and be sane to some extent, you probably will need some kind of process for yourself to see and recognize the work to fruition, or find a way to show it to people, to form relationships, to understand if they will produce it, because we're not really living in the same era where it's as easy to have someone read a play and pick it. In fact, a lot of people read less these days. So it's in musicals, we don't just send the script. So I'm just talking about the process.
That's what I want to unpack. I'm curious about what that process is.
That's more a producerial kind of thing that I kind of realized. And I was like, oh, so look, if I'm a finalist and I don't get the O'Neill, I can just replicate the O'Neill up the street from my house over 2 weeks privately and do the work I need to do. And then I had the O'Neill. So like, do you know what I mean? Like, so that doesn't mean that I may not still be in conversation with the O'Neill or try in the future, but I don't stop. Like, it's almost like having a theater. Sometimes I think to myself, well, it's like, oh, I have a theater company of myself, but I'm not a theater company, but I kind of operate like one. Yeah.
Expand on that. What is that? How do you mean?
I'm not waiting for someone to produce me, but I don't produce my own work. So I think for the work to be ready to produce, you have to understand how to develop it yourself, because even when you have a producer who will be excited and want to work with you, they'll ask you, what do you need? So you're going to have to answer that question. And how can you know that unless you've messed around a little bit and know what you need in your process? And every play may be different, but if you don't answer the question, what will happen is they will answer the question for you, and you may be dissatisfied because you may be like, oh shoot, like I needed to see I needed to work with designers. Oh no, I didn't say that, and now I'm unconfident, and like that kind of stuff.
So once you go through that, because you said you need to see it at least 3 times. Is that what you said?
Well, that's an ideal. It doesn't
sure,
always
100%.
happen. But I think playwrights deserve that, and I wish that they could always get it.
Absolutely. And that's not 3 different productions. That's just 3 times. Like hypothetically, if it was to be given a weekend production that ran a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or is that included? Or are you saying like, I need to see it, how this production company approached it. I want to see how this production company approached it. And okay.
3 times, 3 productions.
Okay.
And it could be how they did it, or it can be 3 different experiences you had. And ideally, and this is, again, super ideal, it wouldn't just be 3 days, it will be
100%.
3 weeks. Yeah. So you can also watch an audience.
Yeah. No, that was more just as an example, because I wasn't sure when you said 3 times if that meant in the same production or if it was 3 separate productions. So is that when you hit that ideal, is that when you'll I mean, I'm assuming like you're making changes throughout this whole process.
Yes, definitely.
Before you go ahead and say, once that happens, now I'm going to send it to a publishing company.
Yeah, publishing is the last stage.
Right.
So that depends. So if it's 3 regionals and I want to do New York, publishing may not be the next stage.
Right. So when do you know when you're ready to? Because I would imagine that we never think we're done.
It's a little bit about how you want to shape. I mean, I think the relationship between the art and the decisions you make as an artist are connected. They're not always the same, but they're connected. Because a lot of what we talked about here too is how I'm steering my life as an artist, not actually about the craft of writing, right? Because I was like the three times thing. It helps me as a writer, but that's also me saying, hey, as an artist, I've just realized this works, and if it's the ideal, right, for me, it may not be the same for everyone. So it depends on what your goals are. So if your goals are to have it in New York and to get certain, it's tough, and put yourself in front of the critics and see what they say. And if you feel like you got what you needed, then maybe that's the right time to publish. Sometimes it's backwards and forwards. Opens for showing was off, and but it did get a glowing Times review, and I felt like it was right to publish because other people wanted to do it. Sure. And so sometimes it's like you're also listening to like your life. You're like listening to what's happening. Like if your inbox is full of 20 people asking you to do the play, geez, maybe is like, do you want to license it? Does your agent want to license it? Do you want to go to a licensing company? And then you're just kind of figuring it out from there. But all of these stages communicate to the world, like if you're done with it, if you want to touch it, if it has movability possibilities, things can always be rediscovered. I mean, Rain and Zoe actually was rediscovered in some ways because it is almost like a comic book on stage in some ways. And I kept being told it had to be a comic book. And I was like, I write comics. It can also be a play.
Right, sure.
So I just trusted myself in that. And yeah, but it has taken longer because of that, because it's, I just think anything that is the storytelling is simple and people relate to it, but the storytelling of how we do it is a little complex or hard or intriguing or different. Like, that's why you've got to find the right partners, because it's like, you've got to find people that want to work on the puzzle. Sure. Like, and all the puzzles have different shapes and have different things. So a Crystal Skillman puzzle is going to be so much different than a James Eldon puzzle. And like, it's like, that's what we're kind of looking for. And I guess I like to make things a little bit like a game to make it fun. I'm very Mary Poppins in that way. Like, I'm like, if it's going to be hard, like, okay, I just accept that it's hard, and it's all hard. Like it takes so much labor. And I try to tell my students this, it takes so much labor to make something that works just as much as something that doesn't work. So when you see something, you really shouldn't, think about what the artist was trying to, it really is quite irrelevant. Your personal opinions about it, you can have them. But what was the artist trying to do? What was the, I mean, that's what's important. So that's why also I think something that might get missed sometimes with writers or younger to early mid-career writers, like I feel like they miss the fact that the one thing they're actually two things they're actually controlling: control of the story, the world they created. They own all that's amazing. It's beautiful and exciting. But also their goal, and each time there's a different goal. So like with Phoenix, so in Indianapolis, I have a different goal than with the production in Atlanta with Rocket Man. They're similar goals, but they're different. And I think a lot about that. And I try to make them challenging but achievable, which is another big thing, because if your goals aren't achievable, you can get depressed.
What were those? What were those two different goals?
Well, they're kind of obvious just because of the way the role happens, right? There's 3 theaters and you have a few months' time. But this one was challenging in a good way, in the sense that Phoenix opened in oh wow, my brain. Just 3 weeks ago. But while that was happening, Atlanta wanted to do their version pretty close to this one. So I was already in pre-production. So there were 2 productions in my head. Right. Both physically in my body, like being in rehearsal rooms with 2 different shows at different stages. So that was really cool. Like it's been so cool. Like that was really new. I've never done something that close and quick. And, you know, I've been expanding a bit into television with just creating some stuff. And I was like, oh my God, it's like being a showrunner. And I was like, and I'm not really in control. Like I'm not the artistic director. I'm not the director. I'm not in charge of these productions, but my brain had to get very organized and sometimes back it up and just be like, this actor that's playing the lead in this show had 4 weeks rehearsal. They're in the 2nd week of productions. This actor's amazing too. They have had 1 week of rehearsal, you know, like really like check. And then it's kind of cool because you're rebirthing again and again, and it allows you to re-examine it. And it's wild. So it's not always that close. Sometimes you have more like two months in between. So you might close that show and then say, hey, I got all these notes. I listened to the audience. And in general, I think listening to the audience is so great too in development and helpful. And in this particular case, because of the pandemic and the producerial needs, right? We ended up doing London, as I mentioned. It was just more accessible. They were less locked down than we were. They were able to practice their craft more in time. So now that I'm back in the States, with all these productions, like I wanted to go out and be in the Midwest. I want to hear what people are thinking and hearing. I want to hear what the board is saying. I want to hear, because otherwise it's so confusing. And now, like, I knew that would also make my heart like go, like, or get excited, or also be like, I may not like everything I hear, but I want to know, especially at this crossroads at such a strange time. And that is absolutely a little inspired by Arthur Miller, because my favorite play of his is the most, and I don't think he's naturalistic at all, actually, but The American Clock, I consider to be one of the best plays in American literature, theater and literature, and also his play. And it was written about his experiences in the Depression, but that came because his job in the Depression was to go across the country and do interviews with people during the Depression. And you can read them all. They're really amazing.
I want to ask you a question about comics, but there was something else that you had brought up. So are you making, when you do that, you're hearing these different audiences, and you got one audience that's responding this way, and another one that's responding another. Will that trigger changes?
It can, yes. But
are they major changes?
It could be, but here's the other thing I want to mention, which is why it's important about the puzzle pieces and the right partners. Because what you want is someone who, when you say, because the playwright will always the playwright is like the god of the world, right? So the playwright knows so much. But the playwright is also a playwright. We're writers, we're artists, we're scared, we're little creatures, like, so there will be moments of panic. And so I am looking from partners that if I say something like, hey, on that night, this two people walked out and they had this feeling. And if I go to the other theater or I say, hey, I think we should change it, I'm scared, or, I want a strong partner to say, Crystal, I hear you, but those are two people. Like,
Right.
I know to do that for myself, but I do need a little checking because
Sure.
I am a great rewriter and I'd like to rewrite. So I wish I could rewrite real life, so I'm always looking for that. But I would say that, I don't know, it's not really always technically James threes. I'm a little lazy as a writer, knowing that threes work.
Sure.
But I would say if I've noticed a comment 3 times, and then sometimes I have to unpack, is it the performance? Is it the design? Is it the writing? Luckily in this case, because I've been so involved, and again, the partners, so much, 2 years of conversation, right? So it's really good. I'm happy with everything. So in most cases, I'm able to just go to the writing right away. Sometimes when you're working with new people or it's like a new experience, it might be really hard to know. Like, is it because it's a preview and the actor isn't there yet? Is it because, but I also try to work with people that understand that, like, what a playwright goes through, and that, like, and it is true that ultimately if a chair is misplaced on stage, I am the one who's blamed. And that's just the way it is. So, like, I have to trust all my partners and let them do their work, but I'm also aware at the end of the day that if a chair is there and a critic comes and they're like, it's a play about a chair and I didn't write a play about a chair, that's not my fault. But I've also I probably wasn't working with the right partner.
But you're aware of that. The director might be aware of that, but the audience doesn't necessarily know.
The audience must be led through the story in some way. And so we have to know what the play is about. So if we really know what the play is about and what we're trying to say or do, then and we know it's not a play about a chair, then we wouldn't have made it a play about a chair. We wouldn't have made it confusing. But that also, when you have a lot of elements, is something I learned from musicals. There's because that's why you have an insane amount of previews with musicals. That's the other thing. Plays don't get enough previews. Like, because if you do have something with a lot of elements, you do need to study it and look at it and go, because you might have missed it. I mean, that happens all the time. Like, we're like, wait a minute, my eye is drawn here. Like, why is this happening? Like, it's not about this guy in the background, right?
Sure, absolutely. But I mean, at the same time, you should be able to rely on your actors for them to know that I know that's not supposed to be there. And
it wouldn't be the actor's job, it'll be the director's job.
No, I'm talking about if one night the chair is not put where it's supposed to.
Oh, no, I meant like if this is why I was talking about, like, I integrally understand how the play works, even though I don't know exactly how, right? So, like, we do a lot of talking about what the play is about. So, like, if emphasis is placed on a part of the story that's only a part of the story, but not the full story, both critics and audience take that as that's the story. Like, if it doesn't happen all the time, but like if a director, for instance, added a lot of transitions, right, and they weren't anything in the world you wrote, you might be intrigued by it and be like, oh, that's awesome. Like, again, maybe, and sometimes I am, but sometimes I might say, hey, I like that, but I think that it's now a little confusing because it seems to be about, because this guy is always, in transition, always taking notes, but he's not actually, he actually has trouble with words. So I'm a little confused. It's just like, I love it, but like, I'm not sure that's the story you want to tell. Yeah.
Right. When you get to a draft that you're happy with, what's the next step that you take?
I always have a few plays, like, and I'm aware of kind of where they're going to go. So I may not have the answer right away. I might say first, I feel like this is really good. I'm not sure. And I feel like I'm ready or close to ready. I don't know where to go from here. So I may then start some coffees with some people or talk to some people, or I might say, hey, do we think this is ready to send out? The big thing I've learned as a playwright is that a no is a no. So I think also my process came from the first 10 years, nobody told me that. And so, so I went through the devastating thing of something very valuable and very good, but if you send it out to 30 theaters and they pass on it, they're not going to look at it again. And, at some point, I think at this point in my career, there's a little wiggle room, but again, you'll never get those first and initial impression. You'll never get that back. You'll never get back of the play. And that's when you want people to fall in love with it. You want people to fall, and they have to fall in love with the story. They have to fall in love with the play, your voice, or these different elements to some degree, because also as hard as it is for us, wow, it's 20 million times harder for them. They're raising the money. They're getting the elements and putting it together. They're getting the audience. They're like, that's such a labor. And even your agent, right? Like they've got to love it because there's so much love. There's just so much work there will never be enough money for it. Like the work is going to take you away from your kids. The work is going to be a lot, So I try to remember that. And that helps me also not get frustrated if someone's not as fast as I am on something. I just try to always remember those sorts of things. So I may not be able to actually know right away. And I may be like, oh, but this play is due here. I have a new play commission. I'm going to move to that. And then what will happen is naturally through working. And this is the other thing, James, and you found it with your festival, work begats work. And so if you're working, then people are always going to ask, well, what do you have next? Or what else do you have? Or and you're going to get a call. And then you say, well, I have this thing. And the other thing I would say for playwrights listening, and I'm sure you've used this resource a bit too, James, but colleges are always looking for new stuff to do and really exciting. So if your friend becomes a professor, take it seriously when they're like, hey, I need something for my new play class. Because that's amazing. They learn and you get to hear it a few times, do some changes. And that's really helpful. And you have structure and you have so I think there's a way that the ecosystem can all help each other as long as we're focused on, and I guess that's what I mean by the phrase of honing the craft, that we're all in it to hone our craft. If it's about celebrity or something else or something very career-y, that's kind of its own thing, and everyone should do what is right for them. But that's a little bit different. So I think also the players I'm interested in are not just necessarily interested in my work, but perhaps the art form in general and sustaining diversity and sustaining different voices in the theater.
Right. But when you get that draft that you're happy with, do you grab it? Do you do a table read? Do you take a step back and listen to it to see if there's anything missing?
Yeah. I wouldn't have known it was ready unless there was a table read.
Okay. So that's part of what and that's my mistake because I'm going there. That's part of your draft writing. So when you get the draft you're happy with, you've already done that table read to where, and I guess that's what I should have.
I might have done many table reads, but it probably would be coming off of a table read where everyone's like, and it does take a few days. I've learned that. So the table read, everyone will be like, it's ready. And you're like, yeah. And then you'll start talking about it in the next week and over the next few days. And then you might get an email saying, you know what, I think it's ready, but, and do you want to hear that? Do you not want to hear that? I think that's all a part of it too. But it seems similar to you. You write for actors. So that and I try to tell my students this too, even if it's brilliant on the page and it's brilliant and it probably is going to be brilliant, but you got to hear, you just don't know what it is until you hear it. You just don't know.
What are the biggest things that your students have had to overcome? Any habits where it's this every year, it's you get the new ones that come in. It's Do
you teach too, James?
I was I used to work on I was a guest reader and guest director for a private high school here called Harvard Westlake, and then there's a high school theater festival in Sacramento. So I'm a part of the respondents on that and do a playwriting workshop. And so for instance, and which I find especially when I read those plays, or it's here's in the second page we're already in a new location.
5 hours pass. That's my favorite stage direction. 13 hours pass. I was like, well, what do we see? Do we just sit there for 13 hours? Just tell me what you want us to
so see. We're just a lot of beginning playwrights, younger playwrights, they do have a tendency to write as if it's a movie.
Yes.
as if it's a screenplay and not a stage play. So things like that. So that's what I'm kind of curious what things you might run into as a teacher.
Same thing with those early beginning things, and I've got some new tricks for that. And I always like changing what I do. But there's two level. It might just be my mindset because they're kind of connected between what your goals and aims are as getting better as an artist and what you want to say and who you are, and then your life as an artist. So I think I graduated from Parsons School of Design with a minor in theater and writing. And so I had all these great poetry, literature, theater courses, and I was always in theater. I just knew I wasn't an actor. I didn't know that you could be a living playwright. So I ended up making these big installations, and again, photography, sculpture, painting, you name it, I had been doing it. And then someone said, oh, you're performing in them, and like these are scripts, and like I think you're a playwright. And so I ended up in this playwright group called Youngblood, which is awesome at EST, and that's when things kind of took off. But where I had to like piece things together was full-length playwriting, because I hadn't come out of a 4-year MFA that particular way. So so I had to really study those elements for myself and what I was doing in a certain way, which might also be partly how I talk and those kinds of things. But the thing that I had accepted, and it's because maybe I'm a little bit more, I didn't think it was weird that I was blue collar and a playwright. And I realized immediately, and this was the time, like things are it is more inclusive and diverse now. So it is better, I think, about talking about you could have a day job or these kinds of things. But a lot of the artistic directors that I would talk to would be like, your dad was a race car driver? Like, oh, like that's not normal. And I was like, well, what is normal? And I kind of got the feeling pretty quickly. I was like, oh, they're used to it. This is like the, 90s, early aughts. They're really used to a lot of trust fundy kind of people, which is not my world and universe. I'm kind of I just kind of grew up as a only child of some hippie dropout racer people. So I kind of realized very quickly that a lot of this has to do with etiquette and society and a whole bunch of other things that I'm taking in. But I never felt, if I had to have a day job, I had a day job, and the best day jobs would let me write. I was a receptionist at one point. Those day jobs kind of dried up, and then because theater. So in terms of the challenges for my students, and then the nonprofits, that was another thing. It was easier to get a job at a nonprofit. I'm not saying that I actually didn't, because I was like, I liked being in the lit office. I liked being in the marketing office for sure. I thought that stuff was cool. It helped me a lot. But I ultimately didn't love being around all the kind of, the nonprofit world wasn't quite right for me as a day job, although I did some day jobs there.
Sure.
But some people were able to say, hey, I'm in the marketing department here and I write plays, and you know what I mean? Like, and it was great. And like that world was more available. Those kinds of jobs are much more scarce now. So they're there, but that's what I'm worried about with my students is like more if they dig into this and they really want to pursue it, they almost feel guilty that they have to take a day job, or they feel guilty they have to do this or that, or they, and I'm just like, I just want to say, this is the world, this is the way it works. And no one has presented you all the solutions. American theater has not figured out, theater in general hasn't figured out how to pay their playwrights in a way, you own the copyright. That's amazing. You own the IP. That's really, really cool. I mean, that's a big gift. But the trade-off is you do not get paid for your time. You do not get paid for rehearsal. These are a lot of things that playwrights are starting to ask for. You don't get health insurance. I love the Dramas Guild. They are a guild. They're not a union. So I think so there is so much of this life that allows amazing flexibility, right, with your art. Like that's so cool, and it feels great, and you get community and a lot of wonderful things. But at the same time, it offers it's a little confusing because you're seeing all the different roads. And I think for the young mind, it's very hard to understand, especially with social media, how someone got somewhere. And so I try really hard to demystify that. And I try really hard to make them understand that any image you see on social, or like I'm a success story, there are 20 years behind that. And here's what that might have looked like. So there's a level of planning and playing and thinking and not being afraid where the money comes from if you need to do a day job. But again, like with the economy being what it is and all these other things, that's what I fear for my students is that and the arts is like how I'm just thinking a lot about how they can continue to grow and use their imaginations and feel fulfilled and get their voices out there, but
Right.
also how they can sustain themselves and how we don't lose them. You know, we lost a lot of artists um, in the past 5 years, I think, you know, especially with the pandemic. So, you know, and it made us kind of reflect of how hard it is to stay in it as well. So you understood if an actor was like, you know what, actually I moved to Wisconsin and right. And I have this day job here and I really like it. And sometimes I, you know, read some plays, but you know, ultimately I'm not in the game anymore, you know, and you're like, oh, you needed to do that for you. But also it's like, that's also because there weren't a lot of options presented.
Are there particular exercises that you enjoy that you give your students?
I do exercises that build. I like to tell this story. They build into something. So, so you could use them or not use them. They always have a point, but they also create really great work. So usually I have them blurb on something they want to write, and I've tricked them by going to a site-specific place and taking some notes and then putting 2 characters there, and then I lead them through what that might be. And so I do all these tricks to kind of elicit strong work and to hear their voices. And then like I'll do an exercise where there's monologue, but all of a sudden you'll realize, oh, that could go in the play. So there's a couple of one-off exercises I do, but I think I liked Youngblood, but one of the, I don't know if this was a real exercise, James, I cannot remember, but I tell it like this, that like we were doing these little warm-up exercises each time before we read work, and I swear to God, I feel like there was one that was like, what would these 2 giraffes say to each other? And I was like, you know what? I don't know if this is helping me. Like, this is not like, I don't need to do jumping jacks. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't need to like, I can write cold if we need to. I know you feel like you need to warm up my engine, but I don't think this is like really helpful. So I kept thinking about, well, how could all the exercises that you think they're like that, you think they're fun, but then they actually can be meat for the sauce. Like I think about that a bit. But I think my favorite one that was taught to me by Scottish, that is more of a one-off, that is more about, it's a very early exercise I do about getting to know your voice. It was taught to me by Scottish playwright David Grigg, Grieg. And he taught to me at the Royal Court, and it is called The Moment When. And you just write the moment when at the top of your list, and then you list all the moments in your life that you found to be dramatic. And this exercise is free writing. I do a lot of free writing exercises. I time them. I'm like Top Chef rules, pencils down for the moment. But those little one-off exercises are definitely to train you not to stare at the blank page, you know, because I don't think that's necessary. Like, and I'm trying to make them understand that you can always edit later, but get out the content now, because we have nothing to shape if we don't have content. So partly that's a little bit of the approach. And then the moment when allows an opportunity to discuss what drama is. So some will say right away, like, oh, and this is good because we live in a time where to say drama to some is cringe. Cringe is drama, drama's cringe. And I said, you know, I'm not even going to touch the word cringe, because you're all going to think about it the way you think about it. But in life, whether you like it or not, or in drama or theater, something happens, right? Like, and that's what we're talking about. But is it embarrassing? Is it funny? Is it weird? Is it sad? Because that it just makes the mind go, oh, cool. It could be any of those things. And I always use as an example on the moment when list, my first job, interview I went for in Poughkeepsie, I stepped in wet cement and I was sinking.
Oh no.
And and these construction workers were like, hey, come over, we'll hose you off. And so I was dripping wet and I just didn't know what to do. And I was horrified, but I was like, I think you're supposed to act confident. And so I just didn't say anything. And I got the job, but I quit 3 days later. But you know, like, but it's fun. Now I can laugh, but it was highly embarrassing then. And then we all had a little chuckle, and you know, and that way, you know, so what's cool is they remember, and I think memory is really important right now because our minds are very scattered. I think we're focused. We're actually like super laser focused, and we're super unfocused. with social media and the world and everything going on. So this allowed, like, some of them will be like, oh my God, I didn't even know I didn't even remember that happened. And all those moments could be a play. And actually then I have a second part to it where they can make one of them a play.
Nice.
Yeah.
How, as I said, I would ask about it, and we haven't gotten to it yet. How is comic book writing helped your playwriting? If it has at all.
It has, definitely. And in fact, the biggest thing, and it could be whatever, poetry, musical theater, or songwriting, comics, write something other, film, TV, it doesn't matter if people see it or not, audio drama, write in another form that is telling a story through a different through a different lens in a different medium. So audio is obviously sound, in film and TV, the camera tells the story, it's like a shark, which eats it up, right? Like it's imagery. Theater is language, and comics are wonderful because they're both, like, and the beats on a comic book, getting to beat that out, are very similar to theater. But what it forces you to do, that also poetry will do as well, and songwriting in their own way, is really focus on economy. Like, you obviously can't have a big monologue in a comic book. I mean, you can break it up, and some of my favorite, 2-page spreads, like, might have that for sure. But like, it is a balance between, it is mostly a visual medium, and the dialogue is supporting that, or a part of the story. And even if you had a huge monologue, like, you're going to need a few panels and understand the beats of that monologue, and understand, it's like, what are we seeing in that monologue, or what's happening between them? Because, if I wrote a monologue, that would be the panel, right? There would be no drawing. And like, it'd be like, well, then what's the point of using this medium? So it really, I think that's really helpful. And I think thinking about what's in each beat, is, again, a real field day. It's fun because it allows your brain to work in a totally different way. But it's very similar. So, Jules Pfeiffer, who recently passed, to me is one of the shining lights of doing it all. Playwright, comic book writer, screenwriter, and technically musical theater writer, because he did the screenplay for Popeye, which was like a musical.
Right. That's right. What are you working on right now?
I'm looking back at Rain and Zoe again, which is pretty ready, because I think as Rocket Men, so it has these 3 theaters, but it hasn't been announced yet, but a 4th theater's coming on. A lot of people have asked to read it. So as I'm touching that, I'm thinking that a conversation, if you like the Rocket Men, but you're looking for something else to do, would be Rain and Zoe. So it's very ready, but making sure that that I'm ready for that. And then I have a play that I've been working on with my husband. We co-wrote a play about Jack Kirby, a comic book artist, called King Kirby. That's also a podcast on Broadway Podcast Network. It's like a 4-part audio drama. Oh, nice. And yeah, it's really fun. You'd really like it, especially if you like comics, and it's all about creation. I mean, that's one of the shining, like, things, like, that ties all my stuff together. It's all about creation and writing of some kind, or the creation that you feel as an activist, even, which is what Rain and Zoe is. But we co-wrote a new play, and we have our first draft. It's called Tragedy, a Comedy, and it's backstage at the Dionysium Playwriting Festivals. Nice. Congrats. Where can people find your work? www.crystalskillman.com. In general, everything is under my name. I'm that on Instagram too, and also all social platforms. And that was my next question. Are you on the socials? I am. It helps my visual happiness, because I like making little posters and stuff, and I like communicating when I'm doing visually. But I do understand if you are all off social to take a break. Totally get it. Absolutely. Well, Crystal Skillman, thank you for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Great. Thank you, James. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.